Hi, I'm Paul Peterson. I'm very excited to speak with you today to introduce you to a series we are launching, Understanding and Embracing the Human Experience to Foster Better Performance. So, why are we doing this? We want to create, through these series of learning discussions, opportunities for us to develop a deeper understanding and to keep an open mind so that we have more of a willingness to embrace the human experience so we all can foster um, better performance and also helping someone achieve their potential. And also by doing that, having a better organization. So, I've been very fortunate throughout my life to have many different experiences um, that have shaped me. I've been part of winning, losing, functional, dysfunctional teams. I've been a part of teams that have overachieved. I've been a part of teams that have underachieved. I've worked with many different companies of all sizes across many different industries. So that's been a great experience that I've gotten to kind of see. Um, what works, what may not work, what works okay. That's been great for me to gain perspective. But there are three very impactful experiences that I'd like to share with you to support why I'm so passionate about um, looking at doing things more humanistic. And I want to start out with, as you can see even behind me, I love sports. I absolutely love sports. I love the underdog. A few weeks ago, it was awesome that CBS was airing that 1985 Villanova Georgetown final, and just being able to experience that again as to what it was like when I was a young teenager, and looking at it from a different perspective too. A couple things that stood out. One was just how hard they played. Not they don't play any harder, but it just seems like they were, I don't know, playing harder, more physical, whatever it may be. But gosh, and the spirit within the building was phenomenal. And I just think also during those times you had like great college teams. I mean, Georgetown was phenomenal and led by Patrick Ewing. But it was the way in which they lost and the way in which they absorbed that loss that really left an impact on me as I was able to experience it all over again at a different moment in my life, to really appreciate how Georgetown had such grace and how Patrick Ewing had such grace and how that was a really cool thing. How they handled losing, and that was something that I didn't take in first go around, but it also brought me back, to looking during those times as what was allowed in the stands. I thought that was great that people had bottles, and here they are with bottles of beer and liquor, all this kind of stuff, and it had such a realness to it. But it also took me back to days of being in middle school, and here's this guy. I love sports, and you would think I loved gym class, and that was torture for me. And I hated going to gym class because I had a teacher who abused me. And it was, I could handle the physical aspects of it. They heal, bruises heal, but it was more the mental aspects of it that were very difficult. And the most difficult part of that was because it allowed or gave permission to perhaps other people, other classmates, other friends, unfortunately, that thought it was acceptable to treat me that way or bully me. And these were friends that I had that we played football at lunchtime and any sport after school. And I was at their houses around the kitchen table having milk and cookies, and I knew their moms, but these were kids, unfortunately, that they modeled their behavior after who was supposed to be someone that was modeling good behavior. Here's someone that is in a position to be of teaching good values and leading the way and having impact. And you have a choice. You can have impact in a negative or a positive way, right? So this went on for a couple of years, unfortunately, and I didn't want to. I was embarrassed by it. It was humiliating. At the same time, as it sort of progressed, my father, unfortunately, was experiencing a lot of issues at work and had lost his job. He, along with some other people at the company, it was a long-standing company, a family company. It was around since the 1800s and it passed over generations, but there was no real other family to keep it going. And here was this group that worked at the company for a long time. They took the company over and they all went it together and everybody was happy because here's this continuation of this legacy. Unfortunately, one of the individuals that had the controlling share really took over ultimate control and became someone that was very difficult to work for and work with, and nor did he want anyone else owning it or running it with him. And my father lost his job, and it was the worst time. I can remember those days for my father, and how something was just so sharply taken away from him. We moved to the town that the office that he went to was in, and he moved his family there to do this, and ultimately, unfortunately, someone controlled his destiny in a negative way. So I didn't really want to share that with him, but it was unavoidable. One time during dinner, I had this humongous welt on my shin. It just happened to be that for whatever reason, he felt like kicking me that day with his busted brown shoes. And, it was a pretty significant welt that my father was able to pick up. He asked me what happened. I wanted to play it off. He wasn't buying it. So ultimately, I told him, and then we had a conversation about what had been going on. So I didn't want him to do it because I, was afraid of what potentially could happen if word got out that, my parents were calling on my behalf. But, he did, and he did the right thing, of course. But here I am. I got called out of class, and I make my journey down the hallway into the dark and dingy room, and I'm sitting like 3 feet off the ground, and I'm looking up at the principal and the guidance counselor, and here they are trying to, make it that it wasn't such a big deal, right? That he was being who he is, and he's a tough guy, and that's the way he is, and he's done this for others, but never, it's never that bad. Doesn't mean it. Underplan, really trying to not make it as big a deal as it really was to me. And I'll just, I couldn't believe it when it was going on, but I think the worst part about it was that ultimately they told him that. My biggest fear was that they would do that, and they did. So that led to taking the biggest and worst beating that I ever had taken from him. I'll never forget what it was like afterwards, and when I had to walk into an office, felt like 7 by 7. It was like I couldn't breathe in the room. And I remember him as being like, I heard what you did, and look, the physical part of it stopped, but the mental continued. I mean, it would be on these cold mornings, like what he started doing to me, instead of, kicking or pulling my hair or hitting him with his gigantic ring over the head. He he basically would make me go out. I'd have the uniform that we had, a short sleeve shirt and some shorts, and I'd run by myself, and I'd have to do 800 yards. And I remember the sounds of my foot with each stride hitting the frozen grass, and just remembering, I couldn't believe what I was going through. So again, that's the negative, and there's the positive, right? The positive was I also happened to love soccer. Soccer was an escape for me. Um, I was good at it, not to be arrogant, but that helped me gain acceptance within that team, and being good helped, having friends or whatnot. But the good thing about soccer was it introduced me to Coach Bob Schumacher. And Coach Bob Schumacher was one of those guys who had a commanding presence. Yeah, his presence was felt. The moment he drove his truck into the parking lot, and he was a guy that was a former Marine. He grew up in the inner city. He brought a level of toughness to him. But it wasn't just the toughness, it was the way in which he ended up believing in us and the way he believed in me. And the way he judged outcome, or the way that he created an environment to um, push for what success he was looking for. And it was a very simple way that he was looking for in each of us. And he uh, he would walk before a game. He'd walk up and down, and he'd look at us, and he'd ask this question, and he would say, "At the end of this game, I want you to feel as though you could look in the eye of each and every one of your teammates and tell them you did your best. And if you can't do that, then you need to look me in the eye and tell me, did you do your best?" And that just stayed with me. And um, I played soccer completely different from that moment on. But it was a sense of belonging he brought to us, of loyalty to each other, bringing your very best. And if you heard him shouting from the sidelines, "Peterson, let's go!" You turned it on. You did not wait. You didn't hesitate. It wasn't a question to be answered. I couldn't opt in or out. But it was something that I needed at that moment in my life. And how I look back as it gave me inspiration, not only to um, believe that I could achieve what I set out to achieve, or what we could do as a team and achieve what we could collectively, but more that, man, I could have an impact like that one day. Um, and I was able to compare two very different styles, and one works and one doesn't. My second experience I'd like to share is during my working life. There were two different approaches that were going on at the same time that I was able to witness and able to share and get a sense of what two different organizations could look like on the inside. And to a certain extent, for several years, and I'm just being honest about it, going to work was very stressful. It was difficult. I felt like I was living two lives. There was one life that was the true me, and then there was the other me, and that was a fabricated version of who I truly am and was. And I felt like I had to push an on-off switch the moment I entered or exited the office doors. I worked for a narcissist. I'm not sure if you've ever had the unpleasant experience of working for one, but it's brutal. If you haven't, I hope you never have to. If you do or have, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And it was a environment that it was to be kind. There was persuasion about how we were supposed to act. There was a persuasion, I would almost call it coercion, quite honestly. Um, but it was they didn't want you to be friends with your coworkers or people that were working for you. There was a hesitation around doing too much of good for others because they'll take advantage of you. So that was sort of this belief that if you were too good to someone, that they're in return of you being too good, they're actually going to do worse for you. So it was a divisive culture. People were pitted against one another. There was a lot of back talk, a lot of behind the scenes manipulation. Sorry, because there was this feel or belief, let's call it a belief, that by fostering that type of competition on the inside, it would absolutely lead to better results. And there were moments where people were shamed publicly, and that was all in an effort because that was the way in which they believed would get better results. Trust me on this, it does not work. Okay, it will not work for the long term, and in fact, it will cause cracks in the foundation. It will cause no matter how many years or how hard people may have worked to create a solid foundation, ultimately there will be cracks and there will be divides, and that will ultimately lead to the demise of that organization. And it has nothing to do with outside forces. It has nothing to do with the market. It has nothing to do with your competition. It has nothing to do with trends. It's from the inside out. An organization will crumble if they do not truly take on the ability to act in a humanistic way. So I had that experience, and at the same time, I was very fortunate to see another way. I was blessed to get to know John Yonkers, and John Yonkers is the equivalent of Steve Jobs to bolting. John was tough. He was difficult at times, but he had a lot of qualities that my former soccer coach had. And over time, I was blessed to get to really know John, and the way in which we developed our relationship, where he valued and trusted me. And as a result, I was able to really get a sense of the inside of the organization and the way that he ran the organization and the way in which he created an environment in that organization. Um, I remember the first organizational meeting he invited me to, where he flew everybody in from all over the world, and here I am, and it was like the most raucous Thanksgiving family dinner you've ever had. I mean, it had energy like you could not believe. There was a spirit, there was an energy going on in that room. There was, amid all this chaos, what I saw, though, they were all in it together, right? So anyone could say what they wanted to say. Didn't matter who said it or what they said. They challenged John. John challenged them, and it was interesting. It was a very interesting dynamic. And over the years, as I experienced more and more from him and the way in which he shaped the organization, he cared about the same kind of principle that Coach Schumacher did, which was what he wanted to see, what he mostly cared about was, are you bringing your best? Are you living up to what you ultimately can become and achieve? And are you doing your ultimate best for the organization? Are you doing your part, and you're bringing your true self and doing everything you possibly can? And he wanted you to bring your true self. So he spoke about the organization as caring for a child, nurturing a child. And if you think about it from that angle, he would talk about, well, with a child, you make sure it's well fed, you make sure it's got rest, you make sure that you're there for it, you're there to when they're needed, you're there to help them through it. And when it needs discipline, and it will, you'll be there, and it worked. There was a spirit in the organization that he created, and when he spoke to your soul. I mean, you would feel it. And he was speaking to you, even though there'd be hundreds of people in the room. It was like he was speaking to you. And I think the biggest thing that I can share with you is that it works. Extremely successful company, great people, and it endures. And I think the way in which he did it is a way in which perhaps we're not always taught to do, and that we are sometimes trying to fabricate too much or control too much or whatever it may be. So unfortunately, John passed away several years ago, and fortunately, his kids are running the company now and doing a great job. And I can attest to it because I'm still very involved, thankfully and gratefully. I'm very fortunate for that because I continue to learn. But yeah, it works. The spirit's still there. So very fortunate for that. Third and final experience, nearly 20 years ago, and this is on a personal level. I experienced what I thought at the time was a significant health deterioration, chest pain, couldn't sleep. I couldn't catch my breath at times. I felt like I had to call 911, even if there was nothing going on. I just felt like something was wrong. There's times I felt like I was having a heart attack. And I went from doctor to doctor, hoping that a doctor would tell me almost something was wrong because I just felt awful. I wasn't myself. I didn't know what was going on. It was dark times for me. But thankfully, the doctor, from doctor to doctor, I was checking off. Nope, you're good there. Nope, you're good there. So that was good. The bad news is I had no idea what the heck was going on, and fortunately, my cousin had experienced panic attacks and was well aware of what was going on and anxiety disorder. So he was very well aware of that too. And I was able to, I took comfort in that because I knew someone that was going through what I was going through. But I'll tell you, I was embarrassed by it. I didn't know much about it, but I was embarrassed. Um, I don't want anyone to know about it, that's for sure. And as this is the time during a time where Google wasn't so prevalent, and I went to the library, I'm doing all this reading, but I still was trying to sort through all this. And I think the hardest part too is trying to bring it to work and be as successful as I possibly could be, or as productive as I possibly could be, knowing that I didn't want anyone to know what was really going on. I tried to hide that. I mean, it was so bad that a victory would be if I could get in the car and literally drive myself to work. That was a milestone. And then a victory, ultimate victory, would be that I can actually walk through the doors and make it through the day. Yeah, that's how exhausting it was, and how challenging it was, and that's how crazy I look back and I'm like, that I endured some of that. And I would say that the hard part too is that, and I don't blame anyone for it, and I don't blame an organization at the time that didn't have a great understanding of it, but wouldn't have been accepted well. I know it, I know it. And I think I would have been probably labeled as don't give him more work, don't give him too many assignments, or don't promote this person. They can't handle stress. He's weak, he's soft. That would have hurt. It would have hurt my trajectory. And that could be going on. And, and you don't even mean it or intend it, but if the organization doesn't collectively have that conscious awareness to it, that you're stifling potential, right? So, fortunately, and this is my segue into my introduction to Dr. Nick, who's going to be leading us along the series of conversations. I was introduced to Dr. Nick from my cousin, and he gave me a great understanding of how to approach anxiety, how to deal with it. And this could be one of the topics, many topics that we're going to be discussing. But the way in which he got me to understand more about myself, the way I think, the way others think, he really taught me about life, about the way our mind and our body and our spirit are connected. And that's what he's going to share with us. And I look at Dr. Nick now as he's a continued advisor to me and mentor to WIS. So others have really benefited from his counsel as well. And, I think that's what's really exciting for me now, is that all of you will get to share and go along this journey with Dr. Nick. And I'm grateful you'll be there with me, because we're going to have the privilege to come to understand and embrace more about the human experience, and how we can use that experience and understanding to foster better performance, and ultimately to achieve our true potential. So thank you very much for joining us along that journey. And I very much look forward to going along that with you.